We are starting Unit 5, Lesson 2. You should be on page 215 in your science notebook. The essential question: how does Earth's surface change slowly? Now we're going to go down to the Engage Your Brain. You're going to find this answer to the question throughout the lesson. When you find it, go back and write it on the blank below. The question is, this glacier is moving slowly. How is it affecting the land around it? Then below there in the active reading is your lesson vocabulary. You have 3 terms that you're going to find highlighted in Lesson 2 that will need to go on the lines below. Page 216, what weathering can do. Animals, plants, water, and temperature are just some of the things that can change an Earth's surface. The active reading. As you read these 2 pages, underline details about what water does to change Earth's surface. Here's the reading. Weathering is the breaking down of rock into smaller pieces. This can happen when tree roots push into the surface of rock. It can happen when animals burrow into the ground. Weathering is often caused by patterns of freezing and thawing. As winter nears, the weather gets colder. Rain falls into cracks in rock and freezes. As liquid water turns to ice, it expands. This widens the cracks. When the ice melts or thaws, the rock is weaker. Pieces crumble and fall away. Little by little, the shape of the rock changes. Smaller pieces of rock may become part of the soil. Now, in that reading, you should have underlined some details about what water does to Earth's surface. If you haven't found the details yet, pause the video and underline the answer. You should have underlined, rain falls into cracks in rock and freezes. As liquid water turns to ice, it expands. This widens the cracks. Another thing we need to do is we have a lesson vocab word that's highlighted. The word is weathering. Go ahead and go back to page 215 and write weathering on the line. Now let's look at the bottom of page 216 and 217. It's going to show you the changes over time. So changing seasons cause patterns of freezing and thawing. This is one way weathering happens. Water moves into cracks and stays there. Then the water freezes. Ice forms in the cracks. The ice takes up more space than liquid water did. Last, the ice widens the cracks. Pieces of rocks may break off. Now we're going to look at the caption on page 217 at the picture above. Weathering by water has caused these rocks to become rounded. Freezing water has also caused some of the rocks to crack. Now let's do the activity to the right on page 217. It says, draw the next stage of weathering for this rock. So it shows you stage 1 and stage 2. You need to draw stage 3. Go ahead and pause the video and draw stage 3. Your drawing should show rock with a more rounded shape than in step 2. Now we are on page 218. This one is called erosion motion. Water, wind, and glaciers never stop moving. They carry soil, rocks, and sand along with them. Over time, this movement changes the shape of the land. We're going to change the active reading a little bit. It should say, as you read, circle the main idea in this section. So you're going to circle the main idea. Here's the reading. In general, erosion happens when soil, rocks, or sand are moved. Wind, water, and glaciers can all cause erosion. It happens everywhere. When waves at a beach wash away sand, that's erosion. When wind blows sand in a desert, that's erosion. When rainfall carries mud into a river, that's erosion. Glaciers are another cause of erosion. A glacier is a large, thick sheet of moving ice. Glaciers slide along slowly. As they move, many glaciers cut paths through the ground. They pick up pieces of weathered rock, sand, and soil. Glaciers push or carry the rocks and soil as they move. Sometimes, glaciers move enough soil to form a whole island. Go ahead and find the main idea in that section. Pause the video if you need to. The sentence that you should have circled for the main idea is the very first sentence. It says, in general, erosion happens when soil, rocks, or sand are moved. Now let's go to the arrow at the bottom of the page. Wind and waves cause weathering as they hit the rock. This breaks the rock into smaller pieces. So this is when the wind and the waves are going up the rock. Then on page 219, it's coming down. Sand, soil, and small rocks erode away. The eroded material moves into the water and away from the land. Let's look at the first picture caption at the top of page 219. Wind and water move sand. This erosion causes one part of the beach to become smaller. Another part of the beach becomes larger when the eroded sand is left there. Picture 2. Over time, erosion can cause big changes. It has caused this beach to become much smaller than it once was. When the lighthouse was built, it was far from the cliff's edge, but wind and waves have weathered and eroded the cliff. Now the lighthouse must be moved to a safer spot. Let's do the math problem. You need to solve this word problem. A lighthouse is 60 meters from the edge of a cliff. The cliff erodes by 3 meters each year. How long will it take for the edge of the cliff to reach the lighthouse? Go ahead and pause the video and figure out this math problem. For this math problem, you need to take 60 meters divided by 3 meters. Go ahead and solve that portion. Your answer should be, it will take 20 years. Once you have that math problem solved, you need to go back to page 218. On page 218, there are 2 vocab words that are highlighted that need to go back on page 215. Those words are erosion and glacier. Go ahead and write those on page 215. Page 220. Soil moves around. Erosion can ruin fields and forests by taking away soil the plants need. But soil that is washed away from one place can help plants in another place. Active reading. As you read, underline the harmful and helpful effects of erosion. So you're finding the effects of erosion. Here we go. As a river flows between its banks, soil and rocks are swept along. The water carries them downstream. Now, there is less soil on the riverbanks. Tree roots may be uncovered. Plants that need the soil may be affected. Without the support of their roots anchored in deep soil, the trees may fall. But soil that is washed away from a riverbank ends up somewhere else. As a river nears the ocean, the water moves more slowly. The rocks and soil in rivers are dropped. This process makes a landform called a delta. A river delta is full of rich soil. In that section, you should have underlined 4 effects from the reading. Pause the video if you need to underline your 4 effects. The first effect that you should have is where it says there is less soil on the riverbanks. The second effect you should have is tree roots may be uncovered. The third effect you should have is the trees may fall. And the last effect you should have is the rocks and soil in the river are dropped. This process makes a landform called a delta. A river delta is full of rich soil. Now let's look at the text feature on the bottom of page 220. Water has eroded soil from the riverbanks. These trees may soon fall. The river's motion carries soil downstream. This leaves less soil for the plants that are growing here. Page 221. Let's look at the picture above and read the captions. As a river nears the ocean, the water slows. Soil and rocks in the river are left behind. Over time, the rocks and soil form a delta. The rich soil of a river delta is a great place for plants to grow. Now let's do the cause and effect activity at the bottom. Fill in the blanks to tell the causes and effects of erosion. Number 1. Moving water carries rocks and blank downstream. Number 2. Growing blank along the riverbanks may become loose. Number 3. Tree blank may be uncovered, causing the trees to fall. And number 4. The rocks and soil may be deposited, forming a blank. Go ahead and pause the video to fill in those 4 blanks for your cause and effect. Number 1. Moving water carries rocks and soil downstream. Number 2. Growing plants along the riverbanks may become loose. Number 3. Tree roots may be uncovered, causing the trees to fall. Number 4. The rocks and soil may be deposited, forming a delta. Now you can turn to page 222, 223, and 224. You can complete those pages for extended learning if you would like.